Just want to make reference to this data CD here. There is a whole heap of information on this data CD played through a computer. It's all on Agenda 21. There's audio files, there are video files, there are little clips, there are documents, PDF files, all sorts of stuff. Much of it is almost classified information that is very hard to obtain in just normal circles, and so you can access this CD, of which I'll be talking a little, from our website, and it is omegatimes.com. And some of these are available to purchase if people want to, but it has taken hours and hours and hours. Some of these have taken me from 5,000 to 10,000 hours just to accumulate and put all the information together, so there's a lot of information there, and this is just one of them. And so they're available should anybody want them. Our website is omegatimes.com, and it is right up to date with everything that's happening around the world in science and the military and the facts of what we would call prophetic statements through the years and through the centuries, and all the things that are taking place on the earth now. So I just want to quickly just make reference to a couple of things here, and then I'll just change tack and just begin to move into some other areas just to help you catch up to speed with some of the things that you may have heard of but don't know too much about. So one of the things I want to just say here is with this whole Agenda 21 thing, which is becoming so prevalent right now is the implementation of this around the world. So we are in the phase where it is being established in all the governments around the world. So I'm trying to just make people aware of this. Here is a document which validates this guy here. This man, his name is Dr. Boyd E. Graves. He is a microbiologist, and he actually has a flow chart here of where they developed the AIDS virus as a biological warfare weapon, and it was developed in the Massachusetts military laboratories in the US by the Pentagon, and he proves that literally it was a created biological weapon that was released, and it was done intentionally, and there it all is. He actually requested that he have a class action brought against the US government and the actual Congress, and this letter verifies the fact that he was attempting to do that, but then told him, as John Ashcroft under Bush's administration passed a state of war against terror, and therefore in a state of war, declared war, nobody is able to take anybody in the military or in the government in the US to court. So it nullified everything he was trying to do. But here it all is, and it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt this was a manufactured biological warfare agent. And as a result, like everything else, Ebola and a whole lot of them, they have all done the same. And so, let me quickly move on. You say, that's a fairly tall statement to say that. Well, all you need to do is go and check out the patent numbers of the US State Patents Office. And as I said, people say to me, oh, how can you prove and how can you validate that? Very simple. Go to the Appropriations Committee website where all the money in the US is put into black budgets. Check out where the money goes, and then you will find what it's actually designated to. And sometimes they'll actually quote the patent numbers. You go and check them out, and what do you find? Production of retroviruses. And here it all is. Here's all the websites down here. Go and check it out yourself. And you'll find they are military owned and created. They own the patents. They designed them, they manufactured them, and as a result they are biological warfare weaponry. Now, as I said, people have no idea what is going on because they don't read, don't research, but that's the truth. Now, here is Merck, one of the big vaccine manufacturing companies. Here's one of their top scientists. Look at him. Read through the information and check out. Now, this has not just happened because of some mistake. Their whole intention is to do this, to reduce the world population. And they actually go in and tell you how they're going to do it. Here's another one. They talk about literally controlling everything through Monsanto as to what you can and cannot eat, what you can and cannot grow. And everything is literally dictated to you, and it will be in our world into which we are now fast entering. Look at this one here. This is Enemy Belligerent Interrogation, Detention and Prosecution Act. And this is by the same man who ran against Obama. And as a result, he was the one that pushed this through the Senate. And as a result, here it tells you, anybody that stands up and protests against anything that the American government wants to do and then resists, they will be incarcerated and they have no right or access to legal protection or defense. This is Nazism, but that's who they are. They're Nazis, the whole of them. John Cain. Look at this one. Bird flu, weapons grade. Here it is. You'll see it. Check it all out. People will not believe it. But it is all for the sake of what we're talking about, Agenda 21. Now look at this. Okay? Even the manufacture of all of your foods. Look at what they're doing now. From fetal aborted babies and added as supplements into what you eat. You're cannibals now, my friends, whether you like it or not. You're eating aborted fetal cells of aborted babies. Incredible. All of this stuff, it's in everything. Look at it. That's not all. There's a whole lot more. Look at them. Absolutely detestable. Insane. Now, quickly, as I want to just get off track, here's another thing that people have no idea what is it all about. HAARP. HAARP is a big 10 square mile block hidden way up in Alaska, and it is the ultimate weapon. It is Tesla's technology, and it literally has the power to literally move the Earth off its axis, the most powerful weapon known to man. Now, in many of the big storms that hit across the world, what they found is here, that the harmonic rings beam down off the ionosphere, causing these massive storms that are hitting the Earth. Now they're actually provable. And here as you go down, and they check them out, takes you right down here to a secret weapons military base on these little islands run by the US Navy. Here it is. Nobody's allowed on there. But you see, people are checking out these things all around the world now because nobody will believe the truth and the facts. And so as a result, this stands for Heterodyne Audio Acoustic Research Project. Now they have another name for it, sanitized name, to give out to the public. But heterodyne means human, audio, sound, acoustic, reverberation, research project. It's the ultimate weapon. And the greatest weapon that is known to man is the power of sound. High frequency, low frequency sound. You can literally destroy windows and glass and everything, and you can destroy foundations of buildings by sound. Sound wave, one of the most powerful weapons known to man. I talked before about all your food and all your vegetables. Now they're all owned, patented by Monsanto and these crowds that literally have been brought in to control all of our food and all of our processing. Now, let me just deviate for a moment because this is an interesting one. I said before that these people are Nazis, and you might think that's just an exaggeration. No, it's not. Absolutely not. Because you see, if you go to a university today, you'll find that you would be taught by psychologists, if you went into that field, to understand the human mind and counseling or anything like that. So you go into sociology or psychiatry or different areas like that. You would be taught that one of the brainiest guys, I guess, that was able to understand and develop this power of understanding and reasoning with the human mind was a man by the name of Carl Jung. What you probably don't know, this man is touted as the #1 authority and the most brainiest guy when it comes to the area of research in this field and subject that has ever lived on the planet. Now, one of the incredible things about it is that you probably don't know, this guy was a Satanist, an absolute outright Satanist. And here he is, This is his family shield. And here he is with angels' wings on his back, saying and stating he is a fallen angel, a dark angel. See? Black, white. And when you go into it, you will understand, there he is, Carl Jung, this is his family shield, and he goes in and tells you about his own experiences, what happened. He was the one that literally introduced Hitler and the SS troops to the occult. They formulated an organization called the Thule Society. The Thule Society, when it was taken to America, was established as the Skull and Bones Society, of which all the American presidents, George Bush Sr., Jr., and all the rest of them are members of the secret society. It is the same order of death of the Thule Society of Nazism. And all these guys that are controlling the US government in the direction of where it is going now, they are all members of the Skull and Bones Club. And I tell you, they are Satanists, absolute outright Satanists, which you will see in just a moment. But this was the guy who spent all of his life, or many years of his life in his earlier, younger years, in India, in an ashram, in a place where they were learning all about the occult, and the actual place where he was taught all this occult and Eastern mysticism was under a religious order called the Order of the Swastika. And it was him that introduced, literally, Hitler to the occult. If you see in the Second World War, Hitler always had a woman in his car. Everywhere he went, he had this woman. Her name is Margaret Sanger. She formulated, when she came back to America, because she was American, when she went back to America, she literally formed what is called the Sanger Institute. It changed its name after the Second World War, again to sanitize who they were, and it became the Eugenics Society. And that changed its name again. Guess what it's called now? You wonder who's behind the drive for abortion? Planned Parenthood. That's who it is. And it was started by this woman who was literally the closest associate to this guy, Carl Jung, and Hitler, and the power behind the whole of the secret society, the SS, who were deeply entrenched in the occult. And the literal thing with the abortion is nothing other than just basically an offering of children. And again, here it is, headed up now by Hillary Clinton and many others. They're all part of it, and they are occultists. No question about it. No question about that. And if you check out Hillary Clinton, you will understand that she's a fourth level witch. Now, this is how they're going to control the whole of the money throughout the world. Look who this is. This is who controls your money and your money flow right throughout all the banks throughout the entire world. If you go into this document here tells you how they're going to haircut everybody's bank. See, they sanitized the terms again. And what they did in Cyprus, they called it haircutting. Okay? Now people say, what does that mean? It means they're going to share your head back to baldness and the regrowth you can have. But we'll take everything else. And that literally is everything inside the bank. And what they've done now is corporatized all banks, so they're a corporation. So if you put money in there, it's an investment. It's not saving. And so consequently, you get interest on it. And so when the bank goes into, the banking corporation goes into receivership, they come in like any other corporation and company. They take all the assets, all the savings, everything that is in that bank, and it becomes part of the assets of the bank, and you get paid a portion back. Here it is, all the documents. So I have actual copies of these documents. They are the valid documents. Quickly, you'll see it here, being implemented now in all the nations throughout the world, Canada, New Zealand. Here it is. They're all law now. What I told you before about your actual chip in your pharmaceuticals, see, here they are. Rings your mobile phone, and it literally informs them when you've taken it, when you haven't, and everything you do will be monitored from here on. Look at this one here. Again, when I was in Brussels and in Luxembourg, this happened while we were there. One of the actual politicians got up and in front of the whole of the EU stated I have heard the most disturbing information, and I am advising everybody, get your savings immediately out of the banks right throughout Europe, because you will not have your money much longer. It'll all be taken. Now, check it out. People's Trust of Australia posted that one, and it's all implemented here as well. Okay. You go into this here, Operation Gladio. They have been behind the actual train bombings in Spain. It's the CIA. It was the CIA, and they blamed it on the separatists in Spain. You'll see all the documentation here. It's all fact. Somebody wrote a book, one of the person that was involved in it, gone public. Many of these people have done so now. As I quickly come to a conclusion, on this subject, I want to just point out that it's very interesting when you understand the prophecies of what is called Saint Malachy, who lived in the 11th century. He was a Catholic bishop in Ireland. He was commissioned to go to see Pope Innocent in Rome because he said some derogative things about him. So he went, he appeared in Rome, he was challenged by the Pope. On his way back, he went up on one of the 7 hills, and he had a vision as he stood there. You can get the actual book, and you can get the actual prophecy, and it's called The Prophecy of the Popes by Saint Malachy. He actually said there will be 112 popes who will sit upon the throne in Rome from this Pope Innocent that lived then when he was alive, and the last one would be the 112th. He named every one of them. He actually named the dates when they would sit as the Pope and be elected in, and when they would resign or be taken out because of death. And he went on and he said this last one will oversee the judgment of mankind upon the earth and the destruction of the earth, and actually named him as well. That man is a Jesuit. You understand? If you understand anything about Jesuits, the military arm of the Roman Catholic Church, and as a result of it, you will understand also that the Jesuits literally were an organization that was formed under the auspices or the direction of a, I've forgotten his name just initially, but however, I'll come back to that in a moment. And so consequently, they were deeply into the occult, they were deeply into a lot of the occultic studies such as the Kabbalah and all of this stuff that they were following in those days, and as a result of it, it is very mystical, it is very evil, it is very manipulative and controlling, and it's all about casting spells and all that sort of stuff. And that was the guy that Saint Ignatius Loyola is his name, and he was the founder of it, and he was definitely deeply entrenched in that. And so you have basically these organizations in the Catholic Vatican who control the direction of the policy, and the one that actually is the most influential in all of those organizations is the Jesuit organization of the arm, the militant arm of Saint Ignatius Loyola, of which he is the present representative, I guess, let me put it that way. Anyway, it's interesting because when you go through a lot of the actual prophecies, it actually states that the last pope will literally be in the Hebrew year 5773, which is 2013, and they actually said, some of them said that he would be elected on the entrance of the month of April, which was exactly what happened. It's amazing when you begin to understand some of the background of this, but I'll leave it there on that subject. Here's an interesting one. See, here's the Vatican, which are the Jesuits, and their astronomy is second to none in their study and their understanding of the stars and all the rest of it, and they are preparing for an alien savior. Do you understand that they have actually put a delegation together to meet the new Messiah when he comes via flying saucer? They have put a delegation, delegation together who will literally meet and welcome that new Messiah when he comes via flying saucer. But here's one of the interesting things. Behind these two guys here, you will see there's a major big observatory that is built in the States, And it is literally funded by the Vatican, manned by the CIA. And they're watching the heavens now for this flying saucer or this satellite or whatever it is that they say is coming. It's called, in the Vatican, named by the Vatican, owned by the Vatican, it is called Lucifer. And you say, what? Okay. Because the Bible talks about two messiahs coming. One is going to be a false one that will come first, and then followed by the genuine one who will bring the judgment of mankind to have to answer for his deeds. And so consequently, this first one's going to be an alien savior, so they tell us. But the reality is, where that observatory is on Mount Graham in the US, he will not be the one that the Bible tells us is the genuine one. He will be the false one that will come first, directed by Satan himself. And Jesus Christ and God himself is no alien. And as a result, that's the greatest deception the Bible tells us is coming upon earth very, very soon. I believe we are living in the time when all of this is being fulfilled right now before our very eyes. Now let me just explain this a little further, and then you will understand. But I'll just touch this first. Here's this Jewish calendar, 5773, and its equivalent of the actual years, the crossover between the years 2012, 2013. And as a result, here in the Zohar, here in the actual Zohar, in one of the Talmudic books in the Jewish Talmud, actually predicts that that year is the year that the Messiah is going to appear in the earth. Now, that's fact. Here's an old guy who was one of the Puritan preachers in the U.S. in Boston, an amazing man who was a holiness preacher. That guy actually in his book prophesied that the same year, 2012 through 2016, would be the years when the Antichrist, the false prophet, would take the throne. Very interesting. They're just one of many. He's just one of many. But this is very, very, very prominent. And we are living in the times of all of this being fulfilled. Now, here's one that I said to you before about Satanism. And you might refute what I said concerning the Bush family. And so many Christians around the world as I traveled told me that George Bush was a Christian. I say you have no idea what you're talking about. It is absolute rubbish. Here, if you understand anything, they have a castle in Colorado owned by the Bush family. It's called the Sedalia Castle. And you'll see a picture of it in a moment. Underneath that castle are crypts. Now this young man who wrote this and signed this, Jess A. LaVey, is now a reverend. He is a pastor in a Baptist church in California. He is the son of Anton LaVey, who founded the actual Satanist Church of California. Do you understand the song that was put out, Hotel California, where it talks about Satan and all the rest of it, and how you can enter in but you can never leave? That was all about the Satanist Church in California, founded by this guy, Anton LaVey. And, Jess LaVey. He is Anton LaVey's son. He ran away from home on 3 occasions. He was brought back by none other than George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. was the head of the CIA at that time, and he actually swears an affidavit of the things that he saw, and he was a child, when he, along with George Bush Jr., literally watched and observed child sacrifice. Now that is testimony, sworn testimony before leading Supreme Court justices. You don't make statements like that, and you don't publish information, and that's publicly accessible. And that is a genuine affidavit, sworn testimony. And as I said, you'll see it, it's there. And people try and tell me he's Christian. I say he is a Skull and Bones member. And as a result, that's what they were involved in. I could go on, I won't. But they are literally involved in a whole lot more than that. And I mean, sordid stuff. Anyway, enough said there. Now, this is what people tell us. I cannot validate this apart from the fact you see the facial imagery, and there is information that you can check out, and it actually states here, and people are saying that she is the daughter of this man. Now, as I say, that's speculation. You make your own judgment. But many journalists and many people have made the likeness. Now, you can check the facts out. It's all there. And you can understand how, as a result, with Aleister Crowley, there were things that were taken place and that happened that literally can seemingly validate this. There is their castle that they own in Colorado, Kemble Castle, Sedalia. Now, as I come to a conclusion here on this subject, okay, Canadian doctor reveals a eugenics weapon for the massive and targeted reduction of the world population. It's only vaccines. People have no idea what they are doing. But all of this is engineered. It is not just happenstance and somebody made a mistake. The actual AIDS virus and many of these hypersensitive viruses are being placed into the immunization programs. And as a result, it is intentional. And many of them actually go public and they state it. They make no secret of the fact. See? Now, I said to you before, concerning this observatory, as I just conclude here, here it is called Lucifer, named by the Jesuits and the Vatican. Here's what it stands for: Large Binocular Telescope, Near Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research. And they called it that. I tell you, we have no idea what is going down. But it's time we began to wake up. It's time we began to realize what is happening. Now, here's a very interesting one, and it tells us here that they have just discovered dark matter, a dark universe. They don't understand what it is, but I don't think you need much explanation there as to determine what it is and what it isn't. All right, let me just quickly come to a conclusion here. Look at this one. Banks warn Australian government set to take inactive accounts. They've just done it. People who have not used the accounts for more than 3 years have just had all their assets seized from them, and their banks have closed the accounts down and it's been given to the government. You say, you have no idea what's coming, but these are the things that are taking place before our very eyes. So I will come to a conclusion here, but some of these are worth reading, some of these statements. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to pervert, to vilify, to fall at the feet of mammon, and to sell this country and this race for their daily bread. We are the tools, the vessels for rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are the intellectual prostitutes. John Swinton, Chief of Staff of the New York Times and Dean of his profession, addressing in New York Press Club, 1953. Here, David Rockefeller. We are grateful to the Washington Post, New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the bright lights of publicity during those years. But the work is now much more sophisticated and prepared to march toward the world government. National sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practice in past centuries. We are on the verge of global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept a new world order. David Rockefeller. That's where we're heading. So I want to end that point of the subject right now, and I want to take a little tack diversion just into some of the things that are happening in nature around our world. So hopefully I can give you enough information that will just bring you up to date with some of the things that are happening that you may not be aware of. Let me first just address the issue of the actual nuclear power plant in Japan, Fukushima. Now, you may not, or you may, but certainly after I tell you, you will begin to realize that there is much of the information that you are totally unaware of and have not heard, and have certainly not been able to uncover a lot of this stuff. But if you look in the right direction, you'll see it. And the information I give you, I trust you will look into, and you will prove and validate it with your own understanding and prove that what I'm saying is true. The actual nuclear power plant that blew up in Chernobyl 20 years ago has not got a patch upon what has happened in Fukushima. They are telling us now, and Japan is gradually just releasing a little information, but you have no idea of what is actually taking place. They are telling us that now the fact of the damage and the fallout with what is happening in Fukushima is 100 times worse than Chernobyl. Now remember, Chernobyl was capped within 3 weeks. They literally encased it with concrete, and they poured literal buckets and bucket loads of concrete via helicopter down that hole, and they literally encased the whole of the nuclear radioactive isotopes and rods in concrete, and they just kept pouring concrete until they buried it. But you go there and nobody can live there. The people that did and the people that have gone in there, they only have a limited space of time with shielded garments, and they've got to get out of there because it's destroyed the place, and nobody will be able to live there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that all escaped just within 3 weeks. Over in Fukushima, they've left their run too late. They can't stop it. It's leaching into the oceans. The actual radiation is now pouring into the air. You can actually get a hold of the satellite photos, and you can see the radiation literally encircling the whole globe now. People are already starting to die because of the cancer and the ingestion of it into their lungs as they breathe. In the actual state of California, the birth rate, or should I say the stillbirth rate, of children being born is just gone through the roof. All the fish in the oceans are dying. All the animals and all the waterways are being affected by it now. Up in the Arctic Circle, all the polar bears, their flesh, their skin, their hair is literally falling out. They are developing lesions all over their skins. Porpoises, dolphins, all the fish, the whales, they are now being seen with literal open, weeping wounds all over their bodies. And as a result of it, it's all because of the radiation. And there is no way they can stop this. They are saying we have 4 years left because the destruction now is unable to be stopped. So you make your own decisions and you make up your own judgments. But let me tell you, this is what has been spoken of by prophets from all different religions and all different backgrounds all over the world, that this is what was going to come. Let me just change tack again, because here's another one. You see, when the Macondo well in the Gulf of Mexico blew up, see, it's interesting how the people who actually cause it and are actually responsible for it and who are should be held accountable and blamed for it, they just go unpunished and they go away unscathed and they walk away from this. You see, we all were told that this was BP. Do you understand? It's not BP at all. They were just the people that were managing it for another organization. And that organization is Halliburton International. Halliburton International is owned by all the American politicians. Well, they're all directors and hold shares in the company, but it's actually owned by none other than Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney, when he was elected as Vice President with Bush Jr., it is illegal for a US politician to take a position in government and in power and still retain companies that can be advantaged or benefit from their position in politics. And in the day when he was elected to become Vice President, I actually saw the clip. He was standing alongside his wife, and journalists came to him and said, "Mr. Cheney, you are the owner-director of a company that is called Halliburton International, and you can benefit from your position in government." He pulled out of his briefcase a document, handed it to his wife and said, "I no longer own the company, she does," and laughed and walked away. Now, if you understand anything about law, you will understand that most of these super rich, they own companies and they are arranged in such a way that they can hand the actual entitlement document to somebody else, and somebody else owns that company just by holding the document. And when a person is charged, he can truthfully and honestly say, "I don't own the company now, somebody else does, they've got the ownership title." See? It's what's called a bearer share certificate company. And the bearer holds the ownership share. And I can hand the document to somebody else while I do my tax for this year, and after I've done my tax and submitted my tax, they then give the document back, and I can truthfully say I didn't have an international company at the time. See, it's all set up for the super rich and the elite. That's how they work, and that's what he did. The truth of it is, if you understand Halliburton International, when the Twin Towers came down, they were holding $3 trillion US, and the day before the Twin Towers came down, Donald Rumsfeld, who was in the same government alongside Dick Cheney, made a question the night before and said $3 trillion are unaccountable for. The next day the Twin Towers came down and they were never able to check it through and never ever found where the $3 trillion went, because all the paperwork disappeared. See? That's what happens with bearer share certificate companies. Now, you make up your own conclusion as to that. But let me tell you something. It is literally, the Macondo well in the Gulf of Mexico was owned by Halliburton. It was just managed by BP. And it was literally on advice that Halliburton refused to do certain things that literally allowed the thing to fall in a state of disrepair that caused the explosion. And they can say what they like, but I've found this so many times. We call it blame shifting, and that's what happened. So BP went down the tubes, Halliburton walked away. You've never heard anything. Because they had written into the actual contract a clause that said they could never be sued because they weren't the managers of it. They were just the silent partners behind. So if there was any misdemeanor that took place, the actual managers would be liable. See, they know how to use their elitism to control the law, and that's what they do. So, we were told that they actually went down and they capped the actual lines and the actual pipes into the ground, into the oil. But that's not true. The whole of the seafloor of the Gulf of Mexico has now broken open. Oil is seeping through, and they're trying to do everything they can to hide it from the public. So what they did, they took thousands and thousands and thousands, it's actually millions of tons of Corexit chemical, and they dumped it over the whole of the water, and it was heavier because oil is lighter than water. Oil floats to the surface. The Corexit is heavier than water, so it literally put this massive chemical blanket over the oil and pushed it back down to the ocean. It's all on the seafloor. Thousands and thousands of tons of oil just below the surface of the water. The whole of the Gulf of Mexico is now poisoned. People who eat the fish are contracting cancer, and they're not allowed to actually publicize that fact. But thousands are dying now. Check it out. And then you will find this, which is sinister and extremely serious. So I said, what happened in Fukushima is bad enough. They're saying we've got 4 years left. But let me tell you something. With what is happening in the weather systems around our world now, you also have only a few years left because of what happened in the Gulf of Mexico. Because you see, there is what happens in the process of nature. It's called the ocean's conveyor belt. And what it does, there's a motion sequence that takes place, and it causes the oceans to flow round the two major continental shelves. And so it brings that flow, that circular motion, brings the cold water of the Arctic Circle down to the equator, and it releases it there. It takes the warm water as it goes from the equator down to the Antarctic, and it literally has a whole greater mass as it flows across to the actual American continent, and as a result, as it goes across there from Africa, it comes up the coast of America on the east coast. It goes into the Gulf of Mexico and comes out. But as it takes the warm water from the actual equator, it takes it down, deposits it in Antarctic waters. Then it brings the extreme cold water from the Antarctic waters up to the central equator, disperses it amongst the warm water, and as it has got this big motion of cold water from the Antarctic, which is very cold, it goes in and takes time as it goes into the Gulf of Mexico, circles around, brings it out, and it literally is able to displace it. And like a heat sink, it needs a greater time to do that with the colder water from the Antarctic. When it comes out, it then moves up the coast of America, takes the warm waters of the equator, goes up to the Arctic Circle, and then starts the whole process over again. Well, my friends, the Arctic Circle and the Antarctic Circle, about which that ocean's conveyor belt moves, is now dead. It no longer works. Because of all the oil and the Corexit that they dumped in the Gulf of Mexico, literally it has made the whole of the Gulf of Mexico like a gelatin, emulsified it, and as a result now, that actual ocean's conveyor belt, here it is, this is what it's called in science, the Gulf Stream, has now stopped. That's why you are experiencing extreme temperatures all over the earth, and you have seen nothing yet to what is coming. The truth of it is, all the fish that literally were up in the cold waters of the Arctic Circle and down in the Antarctic are all moving nearer the equator. And as a result of it, the seasons, the temperatures are all changing. They are finding literally the blue whales and so forth from up in the Arctic Circle are now being seen in the Mediterranean, never ever seen before. Here's another interesting one. If you understand anything about mammals in our oceans, you will understand that they actually have a sonar song. And every race or every branch of the mammals that live in the oceans, they sing an individual sonar song, and their own breed or their own type of mammal will respond to that. So they have their individual signal. And so there are porpoises, there are dolphins, there are seals, there are whales, and they all have their own sonar song. But all of a sudden, now they've found that every single one of them are singing the same song, and it's the distress signal that literally is sent out by a little baby that has lost its mama. And they are singing what is called the death song, all through the oceans, all the mammals. You see, we have been told that nature itself will begin to cry out and send out the warnings when mankind is doing what it is doing to nature itself. Because you see, nature and the animals, the mammals, they all know what's going on, but we're too foolish to see that. Now I just want to say this. I understand politics. I've worked with a lot of politicians. I work with them around the world. But let me say this. One of the things that distresses me greatly is the fact that the people who should know and should speak up, and they are people with conscience, they're too busy making money, too busy doing what they want to be interested in trying to correct what's happening in the world. I'm telling you, we are the only people that can do something about changing this, because it takes people with conscience to do it. But you see, there's another thing other than conscience, and it's courage. And I want to say, I find most people around the world today, politicians, scientists, bankers, even preachers, they're too gutless to stand up and say what needs to be said. And the truth of it is, do you know why communism literally spread halfway around the world within a few short years? is because they said this: for the sake of our policy and our belief, we are prepared to die for what we believe. But I thought that was the church's, the Christians' mandate. But I want to say to you, I don't find too many Christians who are people with conscience. They have the courage of that today, that would die for what they believe. They're too busy trying to survive and make a living for themselves, and too busy trying to make a buck, become wealthy. You see, one of the things I detest upon this earth is these people that have spent their whole pursuit and their whole lifetime trying to convince me that goodness is all about money. And goodness is all about having wealth and being able to influence and to change this world. So there's only two things that will change this world. One is conviction. What is right, conscience. And the other is the courage to do something with it. And if you don't have courage, but you have conviction, you're not going to change anything. If you have courage, but you don't know what you're to do, you also will achieve nothing. I'm saying we have to stand up. We have to become accountable for what we know. And not only that, we have to make those around us, for the sake of our children and another generation, we also have to have the courage to literally make our voice known. And if we lose our life in the process of doing it, then it's time we did it and had the guts enough to stand up for what we believe and challenge these people who are literally implementing this insanity upon the earth, because we will be the ones that will bring our own judgment if we don't. So I just want to say this as I come to a conclusion, that there are signs all over the world right now that are indisputable. You cannot reason them away, you cannot explain them away, you cannot give any conclusion to other than the fact that these things are the signs of nature, spoken of in the Bible, spoken of by many other holy men and books, and all the rest of it, that we would face this hour of destiny upon the earth. And it's all because people will not stand up for what is right. Let me just end by making a quotation, and you'll read it in a Bible, and it was by Jesus. And he said this: there is coming such a time of trouble upon the earth, such as the world has never ever seen before, nor ever will see again. And he said, except those days be cut short, and he would come and intervene, no flesh, no humans would be left alive upon earth. And you just need to look around society now to see what's happening in all these fields of this insanity that's going on, the absolute lack of conscience and right and justice. And you understand people will get out of a car simply because somebody did something to them and pull out a gun and put a bullet through their head. This is insane. But the reason why is because people no longer have a conscience. We have changed our educational systems. We have literally eradicated everything that is just and right. We have removed discipline. We have allowed our politicians to tickle their back pockets with money and influence of bankers and all the rest of it. So you don't know who to believe anymore, and you certainly don't want to trust them, because at the moment they get into their positions, they'll be literally picking your back pocket too. And it's the tragedy that we face all over the world today. Nobody will stand on what is truth or conviction. Nobody will do what they know their conscience tells them to do. And further, those that do have the knowledge of it don't have the courage and the guts enough to stand up and say enough. And I'm saying, if we continue down this path, we are finished. There will be no future for us or our children. Thank you.